Who is for? Who is against? Upon entering the flat, Anastasia took off her cardigan and kerchief, letting her golden hair fall to her shoulders. She gave her head a light shake, and the flat was at once filled with the enchanting fragrances of the taiga. I took a chair and put it next to my own armchair by the desk, turned on my computer, and logged on to the internet. Not all people in Russia today will know what that is, and so I shall give a brief explanation. The internet is an electronic information network, or web, which has been developing at an intensive pace in many countries of the world. With the aid of a computer, one can tap in or log on to this network through a telephone line connected to a server. A server is a special, powerful computer containing all sorts of information pages. On most servers, one has the opportunity of posting one's own messages. The Anastasia Foundation for Culture and Assistance to Creativity, based in Vladimir, together with the Moscow firm known as the Russian Express, has also set up its own server and its own site at the address anastasia.ru. Thus, any readers with a computer can type in the address on their keyboard and not only visit our site, but they can send us an electronic message expressing their opinions about the books, find out what other readers have said about them, and argue or discuss any particular question. Those that do not have a computer can gain access to our website through one of the internet cafes which now operate in all the regional and provincial centers of Russia, as well as, I'm sure, in most major cities. From time to time, I too log onto the internet and look up what my readers have been saying. I have not been able to do this very often, as I simply have not had time to respond to all the correspondence I receive by regular mail. And last year, the Anastasia.ru site received more than 14,000 postings. People discussed concrete questions, connected with Anastasia's ideas on family domains. They suggested draft changes to the Russian constitution. Some were thinking to hold a referendum on the issue. The substance of Anastasia's idea about granting every willing family no less than a hectare of land on which to organize a family domain was set forth in appeals to President Putin. More accurately, and with more cogent backup arguments than I had expressed in my own appeal, published in the book Who Are We? In any case, you can judge for yourselves. For those readers without internet access, I am reproducing here an excerpt from one of the appeals. Open letter to the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, over the years of Soviet power, which even today many of us still remember as the best years of our lives, a most frightful thing, you know, happened. We, the citizens of this great country, Russia, historically a mighty power, which emerged victorious from the terrible Second World War, and in an incredibly short period of time was able to build up its war-ruined economy, we transformed ourselves, without our even being aware of it, into weak-willed parasites and welfare bums. Look back. In Soviet times, we all went to work without ever worrying about a job opening, and received a stable salary on which we could lead a normal life. We handed over our children to be schooled, and we were assured of their future. We knew that upon reaching retirement age, we as pensioners would receive a stable pension and quietly live out our years. And this stability, this mighty totalitarian system, played a dirty trick on us, having got accustomed to social passivity, social apathy, and indifference, and now no longer enjoying access to a stable source of income. We had begun to get very upset. You see, we did not start to take action or improve our lives. We just started vilifying and railing like the blazes at power that be. I want to read that again. You see, we did not take action or improve our lives. We just started vilifying and railing like the blazes at the powers that be, each president and each government in turn blaming them and them alone for our present situation. After all, we figure it is up to them to pay us a stable salary and take care of our present and our future, while we simply live our lives for our own pleasure and do nothing to support this stability and prosperity. I think you will agree that when there is movement only in one direction, that is parasitism. If all we want to do is receive and give nothing in return, well, that's parasitism for you. And now something amazing has happened. Thousands and tens of thousands have risen up under the impulse to make something happen, to create a splendid, flourishing corner of their motherland, Russia, to create a splendid present and future for themselves and their children, to create their own material and spiritual prosperity, to create Russia to be the wealthiest and most flourishing country in the world. And for that, these people need nothing more than a small plot of land, a mere hectare in size, along with the assurance that this land will not be subsequently taken away from them, their motherland, where they will create forever a space of love for themselves and their children, a space of love which will be comprised of all the flourishing corners of our vast Russia, and proclaim the whole world the great miracle, the Renaissance of Russia the Great. It seems to me that even now in Russia, a situation has come about that any ruler, you can call him a president if you like, might dream about, a situation where people themselves desire to work and create their own material and spiritual well-being, asking nothing from the state except a plot of land and a sign of stability expressed in law. Isn't this the dream of any state? To open up an inexhaustible source of wealth and well-being within itself, to find stability within itself and independence from external troubles. Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, like thousands of other Russian citizens, I should like to affirm once more my intention to create my little corner of my motherland, Russia, and to make it into a flourishing garden for many generations of my descendants. Like thousands of other Russian citizens, I hereby reaffirm my intention of laboring for the good of my family and for the good of my motherland. Like thousands of other Russian citizens, I have stopped unthinkingly and relentlessly criticizing either you or our government, realizing the complexity and responsibility of your work. Like thousands of other Russian citizens, I believe in your wisdom and farsightedness, and I am confident that you will take a reasonable approach to appraising the current situation. The time has finally come for you and us to work together as a fraternal team, a team of like-minded thinkers, for us to understand and accept you as a close friend, and then you will feel our love and support and look after us, too, with love, as the people entrusted to your charge. And together we shall create a splendid present and future for our children and for our Russia. 20th of July, 2001. Vadim Ponomaryov, citizen of Russia. They defamed our forebears, too. One day on my computer, I opened up an internet search engine, which lists all the various websites containing any keyword you type in. I typed in the word Anastasia, and the monitor immediately lit up with an impressive list, 246 Russian language sites together with links to their web addresses. Still not believing that they all related to the Siberian Anastasia, I began following the links and familiarizing myself with the content of these pages. It turned out that the vast majority of them did in fact discuss at varying length the Siberian Anastasia. Her ideas were treated favorably on many of the sites, At first I was delighted by this, but as I delved deeper into the volume of information available on the internet, I began coming up against even more incredible phenomenon. Several of the sites offered a selection of articles from the press, along with anonymous messages, claiming that the movement associated with Anastasia was a sect, and that all the readers of the books were categorized as sectarians. One of the sites featured a list, either full or partial, of the existing sects in Russia, and the list included Anastasia and her supporters. There is no mention of the basis for such a conclusion, or of who was spreading such rumors. They were simply set forth as though they were a given fact, and that apparently everybody had known about it for a long time. The articles and brief comments from various national and regional publications posted on different websites were very similar to each other, and they always came to the same conclusion, that the Ringing Cedars of Russia movement was either a sect or a business. The Anastasia movement was lumped in with such sectarian organizations as Shinrikyo and classified as a totalitarian sect. Footnote: Shinrikyo, a Japanese Buddhist religious group founded by Shoko Asara. Some of its members were held responsible for the 1995 gas attack on a Tokyo underground subway line. In 2000, the organization's name was changed to Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew and Arabic alphabets. In 2006, after years in prison, Shoko Asara was sentenced to death. They even used words like bigots and destructivism. No concrete facts were cited, just the conclusion, and that was it. Not knowing the exact definition of the word totalitarianism, I looked it up in my Great Encyclopedia Dictionary and read the following. Footnote: Great Encyclopedia Dictionary, edited by A.M. Prokhorov, 2nd edition, Moscow and St. Petersburg, 2002. Totalitarianism is one of the forms of domination, characterized by its complete control over all spheres of a society's life, along with the virtual liquidation of constitutional rights and freedoms, also by repression of political opposition and dissenters. For example, the various forms of totalitarianism in fascist Germany and Italy, or the communist regime in the USSR. Now that's pretty steep. What they're saying, in effect, is that I or Anastasia have been in control of some flashy totalitarian sect ready to overthrow authority, abolish constitutional freedoms, and institute a fascist regime. But I categorically deny that I have had any governing role in any kind of organization, all the more so in the case of Anastasia. Throughout the past 6 years, I have been working exclusively on my books, and once or twice a year I give talks at readers' conferences, which are open to anyone who wishes to attend. My talks have been recorded on tape. Anybody can have access to them. But why, for what purpose, and by whom is this bald-faced lie being spread about? In one of the newspaper articles, this one in the Vladimir region supplement to Komsomskaya Pravda, it says that in the Anastasia books, readers are encouraged to give up their city apartments and go off into the woods. How can that be, I thought. After all, Anastasia says the exact opposite. Here are her direct words. There is no need to go live in the forest. You need to clean up the place you have been polluting first. Quoted from Book 3, Chapter 21, Should We All Go Live in the Forest? And she calls upon people to build their family domains near big cities and gradually change their lifestyle to one more civilized and more favorable to one's soul and physical health. Not having the opportunity to personally review the tremendous amount of information, let alone analyze it, I turned to several well-known experts in political science to examine the situation independently of each other and draw their own conclusions. Each of them asked considerable compensation for their work, given that they had to read through all 5 books, plus the huge amount of information connected with the books, which had been posted on the internet. I had no choice but to accept their terms. 3 months later, I received the first experts' conclusions, and not long afterward, the remaining reports. Even though they expressed their findings in different words, since they did not know each other and were all working independently, they came to pretty much the same conclusions. I shall cite a few typical excerpts from one of the reports. There is a whole targeted, clearly formulated campaign directed against the Ringing Cedars of Russia series of books with the aim of preventing the spread of these books among the population at large. The pivotal idea of the books are the strengthening of the state, the achievement of the greatest possible unanimity, unanimity, my God, in the various social strata of the population through the well-being of each individual family. This condition of well-being is achieved by virtue of each willing family being allotted no less than 1 hectare of land for lifetime use. In the context of the books, this idea is the most persuasive and takes precedence over all the others. Consequently, the series' opponents, whatever the arguments they put forward, are in fact denouncing this particular idea. The next question raised by the Ringing Cedars of Russia series, the divine nature of man, his spiritual origin, may provoke animosity on the part of many religious denominations. The book's main heroine declares that man's existence in paradise should be built here on earth, and by man himself. Man is eternal, only changing his fleshly form from one century to the next. Our whole natural environment is created by God and comprises his living thoughts. It is only by making contact with nature that man can comprehend what God has programmed and the substance of his purpose for man on the earth. This entire concept, the reasoning behind it, and its extreme persuasiveness cannot fail to provoke opposition, especially among religious fanatics who believe that the end of the world is inevitable and that some people will be transported to a paradise and to beyond the clouds while others are sent to hell. Such a concept is favorable to many people who have been unable to make their own life happy during their existence here on the earth. Oof. The opposition to the idea of the series' main heroine, Anastasia, is being affected by the circulation through the mass media of rumors that its readers, who have taken the initiative to put a number of the projects suggested by the books into practice, belong to some sort of totalitarian sect. This approach is quite deliberate, inasmuch as it serves to distance the authorities from contacts with enterprising readers from examining their specific proposals, as well as from discussing the problems raised in the books in the mass media. It also serves to interfere with the circulation of the books and the ideas put forward in them. It should be pointed out that the opposition has achieved their aim. According to reports on hand, claims about the readers belonging to a sect are being circulated in many government agencies. The specific objectives of the opposition are not clearly presented. They remain quite enigmatic. As a rule, when candidates competing for office use dirty tricks in their campaigns, it is easy to guess who is instigating them. Similarly, in the economic sphere, when individual firms are competing for business, it is not difficult to determine who is behind a smear campaign and why. The goal is always clear: to knock off or weaken the competition. Anastasia talks about a new consciousness for man, a new way of life, establishing the state on a more perfect foundation. Who would oppose an aspiration like that? Only forces interested in the destruction of individual families, states, and society as a whole. The existence of such forces can be traced through their conspicuous opposition, in this case in launching actions directed at Anastasia herself and her ideas, as well as against the readers of the Ringing Cedars of Russia series. To all appearances, they are acting through agencies either directly or indirectly under their jurisdiction, as well as through individuals. I showed Anastasia isolated excerpts from the discussions of the subject on the internet and read her the experts' conclusions in the hope that the situation portrayed would somehow move her or rouse her into taking corrective action. But Anastasia continued sitting quietly beside me on her chair, her hands resting on her knees, her face showing absolutely no concern. On the contrary, it even betrayed a little smile. "What are you smiling for, Anastasia?" I inquired. "Doesn't it bother you at all that they are slandering your readers? The fact that they're blocking their initiatives to obtain land for family domains?" "I am delighted, Vladimir, by the inspired impulse on the part of so many people, by their understanding of the essence and significance of what they are undertaking. See how thoughtfully they are setting forth their thoughts and drawing up plans for the future. And the appeal to the president is better than the one that you formulated in your earlier book, as well as they're making plans to hold a conference with that wonderful title, Choose Your Future. It is very good when people start reflecting on their future." Footnote: the conference later took place in February 2002 in Moscow's Palace of Youth and was attended by hundreds of readers from all over Russia and abroad. The conference proceedings, including presentations on economics, law, ecology, public policy, and other subjects, were subsequently published as a separate volume. Choose Your Future. They are certainly making plans, Anastasia, but don't you see how their plans are being thwarted? What a tricky move someone thought up, to call them sectarians, striking fear into the population and discouraging administrative bodies from contact with them. Don't you see that? I see it. But there is nothing new or sophisticated in such opposition. The same approach was used to destroy the culture, the lifestyle, and the knowledge of our forebears, and now the dark forces are using the old methods again, and they will even come up with provocations and then spread frightening rumors. This has happened before, Vladimir. Footnote: in October 2006, a Central Russian daily newspaper with a circulation of 1.6 million featured an article, subsequently reprinted in other editions throughout the country, claiming that destructive behavior on the part of the readers of the series had reached the point of feeding their children to wild beasts and copulating on tombstones of the dolmens, all at Vladimir Megré's instigation. Similarly, 1,000 years earlier, Christian historians alleged that pagans were offering human sacrifices and engaging in public orgies. Wow. Exactly, this has happened before, and they won. You said yourself they destroyed the culture of our forebears. They distorted history. That means that now, too, using a tested method, they'll win again, if they haven't won already. Hey, just a simple question like granting every willing a family of hectare of land. It's been impossible to solve for a year now. It would have been okay if they'd asked for that hectare for something obscene, but it's impossible to get land for the purpose of organizing one's family domain for normal living conditions and a supply of food. Those refugees that have been living in tent cities for more than 3 years now, if they, at least the ones who wanted it, had each been given a hectare of land, by now they could have turned it into a decent human place to live. Footnote: that was a reference to the hundreds of thousands of people displaced by the war in Chechnya. See footnote 4 in Book 5, Chapter 17. I've thought about it quite a bit, Anastasia, about what colossal changes could take place in our country if only the authorities would not oppose, but help people aspiring to create their own domains. But it is such a simple little question regarding the allocation of land is not being solved. Glad tidings. The question is far from simple, Vladimir. It actually involves major changes on our planet and in the universe. When millions of happy Earth families begin to consciously transform the planet into a flourishing garden, the harmony reigning on the Earth will have an effect on other planets and the whole space of the universe. Right now, the planet Earth is sending a poisonous stench into the cosmos, and more garbage is piling up in orbit, and a malicious energy is radiating from the direction of the Earth. A different energy will be emitted when there is a change in the conscious awareness of earth dwellers, and then the grace emanating from the earth will bestow flourishing gardens upon other planets. Wow, how grand. And has there never been such an opportunity before in human history? After all, in Russia, back before the revolution, landlords had their family estates. And now in many countries there is private ownership of land. We have farmers too who rent out land for extended periods, but nothing comes of it. Why not? There has been no conscious awareness, the kind that is growing today in human minds and souls as little shoots of the divine. What you called a straightforward question, Vladimir, during the occult millennia was the greatest secret held by the priests. Many religions through the ages have talked about God, but none of them has ever stated the obvious. In consciously communing with nature, man communes with divine thought. To understand space is to understand God. And even the thought or the dream of a family domain where everything is in harmony with you embodies much more closeness to God than a whole lot of convoluted rituals. And all the mysteries of the universe will be unfolded to man. And all at once, man will discover within himself capabilities that he cannot even imagine today. And man will become truly godlike, the man that begins to create the divine world around him. Think, why do not wise men ever mention this anywhere? All because once man understands his earthly essence and his capabilities, he will become free from occult spells. The power of the priests will disappear. Nobody and no thing will ever have power over man, a man who has created a space of love around him. And no harsh and threatening judge will the Creator be for such a man, but rather a father and a friend. This is why, through the centuries, they have come up with so many tricks to turn man away from his purpose. Land. Such a straightforward question, you say, Vladimir. But think about how centuries have passed, and man still does not have family land of his own. You were mentioning farmers and landlords, but with their family domain, they hired other people to work the land. They have endeavored to get as much profit as possible out of their land. People who did not work the land themselves could not treat it with love. And often seeds were sown in the ground in anger, and malice grew. For thousands of years, simple truths have been hid from the people. Other people's hands and thoughts should not be compelled to touch one's family land. In different ages, rulers have offered people land allotments, but in such a way that the meaning of their earthly deeds has not been clear to people. If a man is given just a small piece of land, a quarter of a hectare, for example, his family will not be able to build an oasis there, which will serve him effortlessly. A large tract of land is too much for a man to govern independently, and he will end up hiring helpers, thereby involving other people's thoughts. So people have been drawn away by trickery and chicanery from what is important. Does this mean, Anastasia, that not a single religion over thousands of years has ever called upon people to create a divine oasis on the earth's land? On the contrary, they have spent all their time calling people's thought away from the land, somewhere else. So it turns out they... Vladimir, do not say unflattering words about religion. Your spiritual father, the monk Feodoret, led you to where you are today. It is largely thanks to him that you and I met in the first place. The time has come today when congregations of all the various denominations need to think about how to save our spiritual leaders from disaster. What kind of disaster? The same kind that happened in the past century when people sacked the temples and put ministers of various faiths to death. You mean under the Soviet regime. But now you see we have democracy, freedom of religion, and the authorities treat all religions, or at least the major ones, with respect. How could the events of bygone years at all once repeat themselves? How could the effect of bygone years all at once repeat themselves? You should take a closer look at what is happening today, Vladimir. You know that many countries have joined together in the struggle against terrorism. Yes. They have pointed their finger at other countries as the ones promoting terrorism, and they have publicized the names of the investigators. They have accused, among others, some spiritual and religious leaders, and special forces have been assigned to hunt them down. But that is only the beginning. Reports have been given to the leaders of countries, both large and small, exposing the nature of many religions, and they can include a whole lot of examples of how these religions themselves were responsible for fomenting acts of terror and wars on the earth. In these reports, which have already been prepared, analysts have set forth everything accurately and convincingly. Information about many terrible crimes will now gradually come to light. They will remind people of an endless succession of wars, like the Crusades, intrigues and perversions and greed among the ministers of the occult. When anger builds up in a whole lot of people, pogroms may be launched in many places, and these may include the destruction of temples. At the moment, clerics from a number of religions are trying to put a stop to religious extremism, making declarations to the effect that extremists have nothing in common with them. Indeed, these clerics openly condemn extremism. For the moment, these declarations are being accepted, or rather the political leaders feign ignorance. They say they are satisfied with the declarations. In the meantime, these secret reports are already claiming that religions are programming people using any kind of pretext. The pretext may be well-intentioned, calling the faithful to good works, for example, but any faith in something a man cannot see, especially one which he accepts unquestioningly as truth from a preacher, is always fraught with the danger that the thoughts of the programmed believer may be redirected at the will of the preacher. And so today's believers may easily be transformed into tomorrow's suicide bombers. And a whole lot of different facts from both past and present are cited in the reports as evidence in support of this conclusion. Before long, the rulers will become inclined to the opinion that they should select one religion and put it completely under their control, at the same time declaring all others harmful and deserving of elimination. Subsequently, if they do not succeed in drawing all of the people into one religion, then the next step is to destroy all religions, at least within their own borders. Such a decision will lead to a never-ending war. This war has already started. It is already going on. It must be stopped. And this can only be done in one way, by giving birth to a conscious awareness on the part of our spiritual leaders. Only glad tidings can restore peace to all of the earth. Those that accept the glad tidings and proclaim them in temples both great and small, they will fill the temples with multitudes of people. Those that do not perceive the sayings will find in themselves temples that are empty and decaying. What glad tidings are you referring to, Anastasia? Can you explain it a little more simply? People who call themselves spiritual leaders, who talk of God and teach children in the schools today, should recognize as a God-pleasing deed the co-creation of a space of love in the personal domain of every family dwelling on the earth. Not only to recognize this, but to create designs as well for future projects together with their parishioners. To endeavor, along with the people, to bring back the knowledge of pristine origins, to dream and discuss such a theme, and then to bring the decision to perfection in all its detail. The process of creating the dream will take many years. Then, when all this comes to prevail upon the earth, people will live in harmony, in a real, divine space of love. I've got it, Anastasia. You want everyone to begin studying nature in all the in all the temples of whatever religious persuasion, and in the schools and in institutions of higher learning, to master the science of creating a family domain according to a special design. Let's say this can actually bring various religious denominations together into a common alliance, not just to put it in words, but in deeds. Let's suppose it could really awaken people from their hypnotic sleep and put an end to terrorism and drug use and a whole lot of other negative tendencies in society. Right. Let's suppose, but how will you be able to convince all the patriarchs and all the clerics, and in so many different denominations? How will you be able to convince all the secular educational institutions? A lot of the things you say come true, Anastasia, but what you're talking about at the moment is completely unfeasible. It's a sheer pie in the sky. It is feasible. They have no other choice now. Well, that's just what you think. Just you. Those are mere words that you are saying. But the one who allows me to utter these mere words, as you put it, possesses power unsurpassed. You may remember, back 7+ years ago, when you were still an entrepreneur, that I stood before you and drew letters in the sand by the lake and the taiga. Yes, I remember. What of it? And then all at once, you began to write books, and now a whole lot of people are already reading them. Who do you think was mainly responsible for this? The sand? By the taiga lake? The stick that I drew it with? The words that I articulated? Or perhaps your hand created the books all by itself? And later poetry welled up like a sacred spring in human hearts? Who was the chief creator behind all of these works of art? I don't know. Possibly all the factors played a part. Believe me, Vladimir, please try to understand. It is his energy that stands behind everything that was created. It is his energy that inspired human hearts, and it will continue to inspire them. Perhaps, but somehow it's hard to believe that church ministers will start acting the way you say. You should believe in this, and visualize a gladsome prospect within yourself, and then it will come to achievement. All the more so, since that is no longer hard for you to do. You remember how an Orthodox village priest came to you to cheer up your crestfallen spirits. See Book 4, Chapter 24, Take Back Your Motherland, People. Another priest paid for your books with his own money and then distributed them to prisons. And Father Feodoret talked with you about a lot of things. Do you remember? I do. You should realize, too, that not all church ministers share the same worldview. There are those who will proclaim these glad tidings. Yes, I think you're right. But there will be others who will begin to oppose them. Especially the high priest you spoke about. His occult agents will think up some kind of new intrigue. Of course they will. But all of the dark forces' endeavors will now be in vain. The process has begun, and it has already attained the point of no return. People will learn firsthand of their earthly paradise. These are mere words, you will say, but here, I shall now utter 2 simple words, and a part of the darkness will be illuminated with light. Let the rest of the darkness tremble and begin to conceal their names as they fail to win the possibility of turning into a reality. And these words are uttered simple. The Book of Ken. Footnote, the Book of Ken, a translation of the 2-word Russian phrase Radovaya Kniga,